We have the pleasure today of being joined by Kimberly O'Donnell, Chief Fundraising Officer, Tanuja Korlepra, Chief Technology Officer, Kelly Capote, our Chief People Officer, Paris Schneider, our Chief Sales Officer, Murcha Struguru, our SVP of Engineering, and Ben Miller, our SVP of Data Science and Analytics, who will be facilitating the conversation this afternoon. So without further ado, I will take a break here. And Ben, I'll go ahead and pause and pass to you to lead today's conversation.
Thank you so much, Ashley, and welcome everyone. Glad you're here to join us today. As any good data scientist, I want to start off the conversation by telling you we are going to be giving you predictions, but predictions are just that and can change and move, and we're doing the best we can to predict where things will be. And we have a panel of experts in this area that are going to help you navigate those predictions. And I want to also mention, as we are a technology firm and technologists, if we're using any language that is more sophisticated or something that you haven't heard before, please feel free to ask that question so that we can make sure. The idea here is to make sure that you understand where the state of AI is and how it might look in 2026. And I think a lot of us have experienced AI in a lot of variety of ways. And so we'll talk about that a little bit as we go. What we're going to talk through today are those predictions, and each of our panelists have come today with their predictions, and I'm going to turn to them and ask, one related to, how can we cut down on administrative tasks? Another related on adoption of AI has to be easy in order for it to work, right? Another related to how it might impact events and that type of giving. And we're going to go through and each of these predictions, but I want to first set the stage with the next slide about sort of the landscape of where we are today. So if we look back over the past, I'd say more than a decade, we've been in a situation where we are getting more dollars coming into the nonprofit ecosystem, but less donors. And there is a real concern about everyday donors declining in the sector, and what can be done about it. Now, on top of that pressure, we have a number of other pressures present in 2026, including, political volatility that is happening, and civil unrest that is occurring. The federal government, with their new bill, has introduced a whole nother new scheme of how people might give, how corporations might give, introducing new floors and tax breaks. So we'll see how that's going to impact in 2026. In addition to that, there was a lot of federal funding cut from nonprofits, right? And so nonprofits are in this vortex of a lot of different pressures coming in and having to do more with less. And meanwhile, AI has been taking off and seems to be like this knight in shining armor to some, and others a big bubble that's going to burst, right? And so we're going to sort of set the record straight today to talk through how AI can help. What is hype and what is not, and there's a lot that can be gained from AI, and we want to help you as the nonprofit sector, whose number one priority isn't how can I adopt AI, but how can I help our participants? How can I help my constituents? And we want to help you do that in a way that is approachable and accessible. So if we have ended today with that as our goal and you've reached it, then we'll be successful. Panel, it's a large task, so I ask that, help me out here. So if we want to jump right into our first prediction, Mircea, I'm going to start with you, which is related to efficiencies and how much efficiency we might expect for the nonprofit sector. So please take it away.
Great. Thanks, Ben. So efficiency, you probably spend a significant portion of your time during the week on administrative tasks, segmenting perhaps donors, figuring out who you want to reach out to, creating reports, drafting letters, preparing board materials, and so on and so on. All these activities take time from you, require the knowledge that you already have, but there is a potential for those activities to be automated. And my prediction here is that with the help of agentic AI, you could reduce that burden in half, if not even more. How do we think that's possible? Agentic AI is different from just regular automations or the tools that you may have used before. AI, as in generative AI, a ChatGPT generic chatbot, doesn't do more than just write a bit of text. Our agents, instead of just assisting you on a single activity that you still have to do yourself, they can execute a sequence of tasks. They may have a certain degree of autonomy within the boundaries that you are in control of. So, for example, you may work with an agent to identify donors that are likely to give again for a specific event or for a specific program that you care about, but maybe they haven't engaged in a while, right? So the target there would be for the agent to create a re-engagement message, to reach out to various segments in different ways, and maybe for the most important donors in each segment, flag them so you can have a personal connection with them, engage directly human to human, not just an email message, for example. So an agent could work through this workflow, could execute this workflow and give you the results for review, and you could approve the execution, and then that will happen. You don't have to do it yourself. This kind of activity, it's not just cleaning up low-level administrative activities. AI will do research, will classify, will prioritize. So it's definitely adding value on top of just plain workload automation. AI also requires attention and judgment. So shifting part of that to AI, you're recovering hours that you can translate into only the work that it's only you as humans can do, right? You can do additional donor visits. You can have a conversation with a board member. You can follow up on a major gift opportunities, or things that otherwise would have had to wait or never happen. So one more thing that I have to say about this is that ethical and transparent AI adoption is not a constraint on progress. It is actually what makes sustainable progress possible because your donors and your communities have trust in you. And that trust depends in knowing that when you work with AI, there is a human that you are behind those decisions that are affecting them. So when you define clear policies for AIs, where AI is operating, what context is using, where are the guardrails, where your staff remains in control, it's your team that adopts it faster and your communities that integrate in that workflow more seamlessly and gain confidence and trust, and that makes the whole cycle sustainable. That's
Mircea,
what I would have to say about this, Ben.
that's great points. I wanted to ask you to push in on a little bit here because, well, one of the things that I mentioned at the top was just that everyone experiences AI in different ways, right? And so ChatGPT is a common one that people might be experiencing, but AI is appearing everywhere. And context is king here, right? And so there's a whole term called context engineering, right? And when you're in ChatGPT, it's missing a ton of context that someone might have, right? And so I wondered, if you might talk a little bit about, well, two things, twofold on this question. One is like how much context matters in this and why it's so important. And two, it's not just that like, oh, I can do my task now in 50% of the time. I actually would argue that it's more, I can do 50% more, right?
Yes.
And so therefore it's not necessarily making your work each individual work item, take half the time, but it's that it's empowering users. So I wondered if you might comment on both of those.
Great. So I completely agree with what you said. It's not just spending less time on administrative tasks. It's actually doing significantly more because like the type of research that the agent is doing using the context, and I'll talk about that in a second. That type of research, many people that started using our agents said we never had time to do this at all. So it's like it is indeed additional work, additional research that you can do through the agents that you were never doing before. So it's not just reducing burden, it's actually going deeper and having more valuable actions. In terms of context, that is what you and I are working, around the clock to improve. I would say that our goal here is to make the challenge of having good context transparent to our customers because we do all the heavy lifting behind the scenes. Given that we have access to the organization data, given that we have your data science team digging through the data and essentially generating insights that the agent has access to, all of that feels a bit like magic for the end user because to a large extent, they don't really have to provide a lot of context, right? For example, if one of you will be drafting an email with our agents, the agent already knows to look at your previous emails is capable to understand which were the best performing emails from your history and take the tone and take the way that you are reaching out to your community and adopt that tone in the emails that it creates from now on, right? So all that context enrichment, in our case, is work that we take on ourselves that's almost transparent to you. So it's definitely a key thing that ensures performance and success of agentic workflows. In our case, because like when you're using our Bonterra products, we have all that data and we do all the heavy lifting behind the scenes.
Thank you for that, Mircea. And I'm going to also make sure the panelist knows if I see you come off mute, I know you've got something to add. Otherwise, I'll be throwing questions out at different people. I just want to say one more thing here that if the expectation is to just engage with AI and not do any work at all, I think that that's a mistake. It's like hiring a new employee. You need to do the onboarding. You need to put the work together to make it configured exactly the way you need it. And then once you've done that, it explodes. So sometimes you might be disappointed with how much work you need to do, but that's only because you haven't set up. Now, we at Bonterra have tried very hard to do a lot of the configurations behind the scenes, as Mircea was just mentioning, to make it easier. But I want the expectations to be understood. Like there are very good strengths with AI, but it does require that configuration. It does require that hard work to get it there. I'm going to go on to the next because I didn't see anyone come off mute and I didn't have anyone I was going to throw that to. So the next part here, Mircea, is back to you for a demo.
Wonderful. Well, I think you only have to click play and you'll get the recorded demo. This is
Bonterra's fundraising software designed for smaller nonprofits. Small nonprofit fundraisers are juggling many responsibilities, and in fact, they're often referred to as the chief everything officers. But with Q, which is embedded right inside their Network for Good dashboard, they can feel superhuman. They get a smart and always-on assistant that understands their nonprofit's data, has access to decades of fundraising best practices, and can take action. And in fact, Q has already identified several opportunities for this nonprofit to improve their fundraising performance. I know that donor retention is one of the hardest parts of fundraising, so let's ask Q to search for donors likely to give again. Q is searching our fundraising best practices knowledge base and analyzing this nonprofit's historic fundraising data to come up with not only detailed analysis and a list of actionable strategies, but also a list of actual donors that I can include in a retention campaign. And if I'm planning to do one-to-one outreach for any of these individual donors, Q can also analyze and generate a summary for that donor, complete with historic giving patterns and communication preferences to help personalize that outreach. So with these tools, Q is saving a small nonprofit fundraiser critical hours and helping them fundraise with more confidence. Now I'm going to switch over to Every Action, which is designed for a larger nonprofit audience. And as you can see, this is the same Q experience. Q is designed to work across Bonterra products so that no matter which software you're using, Q is always there and always has the right context and tools for the job. For our larger nonprofits, Q is not only able to analyze fundraising performance, but can also create bespoke emails and fundraising pages for any campaign or audience. Now, I'm going to ask Q to generate an email, encouraging my lapsed donors to give again to a specific program supporting at-risk youths. And behind the scenes, the Q agent is researching best practices that are relevant to this campaign and analyzing the nonprofit's past email performance history to generate an email that matches the nonprofit's look and feel and brand voice. Great. So Q has created an email that follows best practices, reflects the nonprofit's unique tone of voice, and uses subject lines and copy similar to other high-performing emails in their email database. Q has even provided merge fields so that this email will be personalized for individual donors. And I can ask Q to make changes. So let's ask for a language that is more casual. And now we can see that Q has updated the language to make it feel more conversational and approachable. With these tools, Q helps organizations raise more, fund smarter, and deliver services faster so they can focus on what really matters, having impact and building real human connections.
Thank you. And so I want to just mention something as a data scientist on this, which is that I don't want the audience to take away that you could just go into any LLM, which is a large language model, which is what ChatGPT is, and ask it to predict the future. It will, and it will give you a predictive thing because it's really good at saying the next words that are good. But we are using actual predictive models underneath the hood here. We're using data science to help drive those. So this isn't an LLM assuming it knows what's going to happen. This is a predictive model that has been tried and true and in the marketplace for some time, telling you who those lapse donors are that are most likely, who are the people that are most likely to upgrade. So I just want to make that point so you don't walk away thinking that's available everywhere anytime you interact with ChatGPT. I see Kimberly. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to also provide a little bit of context for folks because I have seen a few questions in our Q&A about, what is agentic AI? What do use cases look like? So that was one of the reasons why we added that short little demo to this discussion today, was to really show you what agentic AI looks like and how you can use it for fundraising purposes and how it can really fit into the work that you're doing because it has your data, right? Because you've fed it information that helps it understand your voice. And so that's where the real power of AI can come into play, is when you are bringing your data, your voice, your organization together and using agentic AI. And because we are Bonterra, we wanted to show you what our tools look like, but it just gives you a sense of the use cases that are out there.
Thank you for that, Kimberly. And now I'm going to turn to the second prediction here from Kelly. And Kelly, can you please take us through why ease of use is so important for adoption? And if you have any cases of where you've seen no ROI because it's so hard to use, please throw those in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ben. And hi, everyone. Excited to be here. I have the immense privilege of supporting our customer success organization here at Bonterra. And so with that comes the opportunity to work, with tens of thousands of nonprofits and organizations like yourself. And what's interesting is, I believe there's a strong parallel here. A lot of what my team and organization is focused on, right, is grounded in adoption and personalization for our customers, right, which is essentially what you all are trying to do with your donors and volunteers every day, like using what you know about them to constantly sort of maximize what we like to call donor lifetime value, which is really similar to how I think about customer lifetime value for our customers. So if there's one thing that's been clear to us and starting to work with all of you, it's that, ROI from AI tools is not going to come from flashy tools. It's really grounded much more pragmatically in tools that are simple, embedded, and immediately useful. And so we understand the day-to-day, capacity constraints, time, and just the lack of like tolerance for disruption given the nature of what you do every day, and we appreciate that. And so we strongly believe that adoption really hinges in ease of use and relevance. So really, I want to step through three key points, and I'll try and surface some real world examples and use cases and observations that we've witnessed firsthand with our customers. So first off, we've definitely witnessed that nonprofits and organizations like yourself, they're not looking to retool their organizations around AI, right? They're really trying to understand, how can I best adopt AI where it shows up, where they're already working. So we know that you all are in CRMs and grant systems and email and spreadsheets. And it's those places where you're already working today, when it lives inside of those systems rather than as a separate platform, that it gets used. So to really make it a daily habit and really a capacity builder for your organization, we need to embed it into where you're already working, not because that's just easier, but similar to what Kimberly said, that's where all the richness of the data is, right? To make it that much more effective in understanding your donors and volunteers and supporters. So that's point number one. Point number two is, I would say, advanced AI capabilities don't matter if the staff doesn't feel confident in using them. So again, we understand, that you all value trust, clarity, predictability. There's not a lot of extra time to go figure these things out. So tools that are really suggesting, summarizing, sort of, offering up insights around what the next best action should be, those are the ones that are, drawing immediate value for you day to day. So what I like to say is like nonprofits don't really want to become AI experts per se. What you all should seek to want this to do is to make it kind of quietly work in the background, right? To make your lives easier, and drive up and support your fundraising efforts. And then last but not least, I think this one is really important, especially for those on the call who are thinking about like, how do I get started? Like, I'm trying to dip my toe in the water. Where do I go first? I would say ROI doesn't start with transformation. It's really about, starting with momentum and some really practical, simple to use cases that you're trying to regularly work through day to day. So the nonprofits that we've seen really starting to get some immediate ROI are those that are starting with kind of low risk, common need use cases. Those are the ones that will help yourselves and your staff like trust AI, and leadership, further justify some investment in there as well. So a few examples, I think the demo that Murcha and Ben shared earlier were some great early examples around donor segmentation and things like that. But some other examples that I've seen to be really prominent are like, automatically summarizing donor histories before meetings. Like we're all moving, fast. We're jumping from one thing to the next instead of having to spend all that prep time. It's right there at your fingertips. Drafting first pass donor thank you emails, or stewardship updates. I think the key there is not just one blanket email, but the ability for it to understand the voice needed for that customer and their specific kind of journey with you. So it really strikes that personalization aspect that's just hard for us to do in a manual, scalable way. And then the last one, suggesting next best actions based on past engagement. Everyone's in a little bit different spot in their journey, right? And understanding, how you can best support that specific donor or that volunteer, leveraging all that goodness of the data and the history that you have to kind of guide them through that is incredibly impactful. So I like to say that adoption grows when AOI proves itself in the everyday work. And this is really both in terms of efficiency and efficacy. When done right, like this will be a true capacity builder for you all. But it'll also make some of the things that you're already doing that much more impactful as you go. And so in closing, I would say, the nonprofits that are going to see ROI from AI in 2026, it's not going to be those that are experimenting with the most tools. It'll be the ones, that are grounded in the ones that actually deliver impact and are integrated into their day-to-day workflows.
Excellent points there, Kelly. And I think very much related to what we were just talking about context and getting all that in, right? I mean, that's how you make it easy to use. That's how you make it accessible and that sort of thing. So I am looking at timing, and I know that we have 3 more panelists going to do their predictions. I'm not going to go and turn to our other people right now. I'm going to go to the next prediction. And so if someone does have something they want to jump in and say, then please do go off mute and I'll throw it to you. But first, I want to take it to the next prediction for Tanuja, and talk about what is outcomes as a service and why do you think that's going to be happening in 2026?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. First of all, very great to be here. My name is Tanuja Kurlepra, and I'm the CTO at Bonterra. One thing I will start with is that it's a great privilege to be working in this space because, as you're seeing, there are many technologists here. It's really amazing to be able to bring technology to the space that really matters for us and our communities. And when we are able to connect latest technology with impact, with social good, it's actually like the best of all worlds. So we take it very seriously. We take huge responsibility in making sure that we are building and designing the right systems that are ethical, that are correct, that are helpful for all of our customers that we really, really value. So with that, jumping into my prediction, one thing I believe strongly is the world of software as a service is going to evolve into outcome as a service. It's not new. It's just building upon what we already have. So what we have today primarily is a lot of software. It's valuable. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with software. We build it. But what primarily happens when we think about software as a service is we are talking about features, tools, like there is an email generation capability, there is a volunteer management capability. It's really features and functionalities that are offered to you, and then it's up to you on how you use it, right? So the evolution we predict and the what we are working towards is outcome as a service, where instead of focusing on what are the features and functionalities in a software, we drive focus on what exactly can it do for you. So for example, I'll give you a couple of examples. So if you are looking at a fundraising opportunity, it will, instead of thinking about, do I have email templates that I need for in a fundraising platform, you can actually start thinking about, can it raise $50,000? Or if you are working with a volunteer management system, you can start thinking about, how do I send emails or how do I encourage volunteering, to really focusing on the outcome, as in, I want 200 volunteers recruited and showing up on this day. Or on the grant side, instead of managing a grant database, you can start thinking about, how do I get 15 grant applications submitted and approved, right? So it shifts the outcome from what do you click and what happens when you click on a software or a UI, to what really matters to you, what are the results you're trying to achieve. And that's how we want to partner with you on evolving this space, because we know that the more we can do in the space of social good, the more impact we can make, and we are all really committed towards that. So some of the developments that we are seeing in this evolution of software has been made possible by agentic AI. So a lot of us are familiar with just conversational AI, where you go and ask a question and it answers. We are thinking beyond that. We are thinking, how does agentic AI, which is more of a technology term, what it means is, how can this tool or this agent take my context that Ben and Mircha and Kelly touched upon, that is specific to you, that is relevant to you, and understand your goals, and go and figure out what are the steps it needs to take to give you that outcome. And when it does that in a way that you are in the loop. So you're always at the driver's seat. You're giving the context and the guardrails and the objectives. And the software figures out how to do that for you, comes back with a proposal, and you hit yes, go ahead and do it. So you give the green light, you're the one who approves it, and the software goes and achieves the outcome for you. What that does is, and building upon what Mircha said and what Kelly said, a lot of this administrative work is now handled by the software, where this undifferentiated heavy lifting that you had to do before, with clickings and defining the workflows and validating the workflows and monitoring if someone opened the email, or looking at how many donors do you have manually, all of that work, all of that heavy lifting is done for you. And then you are on the driver's seat because you're approving, you're validating, and it's a trust-based system between the outcome as a service model and you as the user or the driver of this thing. So yeah, that's my prediction. And Ben, I wanted to be cognizant of time and wrap it up quickly, but curious if you have any questions on that.
No, that's wonderful, Tanuja. It actually makes me, and I see Kimberly's come off mute, so I'm going to turn to her next. But it reminds me of and I'm going to age myself, but I'm afraid my gray hair is doing that already for me. So my professor in graduate school was talking about the transformation of web applications, where software was no longer delivered through, your computer, but you could actually go to the web and there was a software you could access it. And I thought back then at the time, well, that's an interesting thing. And now if you look today, like that's everywhere, like, you know what I mean? So that transformation feels very similar to what you're pointing out here, Tanuja. And I feel like you're seeing something as someone who's deeply knowledgeable about technology here, that that this transformation is happening. So whether it happens in 2026 or not, I'm going to take that prediction the same way I took the one back in grad school. And with that, Kimberly, I do want to turn to you to hear your comments.
Agree on that, Ben. And this is what's really cool to work with such experienced, true experts in their fields, like Tanuja, Marcia, Kelly, and others, because they're bringing a perspective that, for me, having been in the nonprofit sector, my career, it really just is really fresh and is pushing us forward in new ways. And what I wanted to just associate here is, as we look at that headline, SaaS will evolve into outcome as a service, I thought, oh my gosh, isn't it interesting that here we're talking about SaaS and how SaaS needs to be outcome and impact specific. And that is what our funders have been talking to us about for the last 20 years. They've been saying, hey, it's not about the programs that you have. It's not about how many beds you filled at your shelter, right? It's not about how many meals you've served in the last week or year. It's about what impact you're making. And so I think it's fascinating that now we're looking at the tools that we're using and we're asking the same thing of our tools. Hey, tools, what impact are you making in the social good space, and how is that going to help me make an even greater impact?
Great point. And I do think that AI is that bridge. I mean, to software is supposed to make life easier, right? But it doesn't always do that, right? And I think AI is a bridge that can help with that, right? Because it can help some of that complexity and configuration. So let's go on to the next prediction, which I believe is Parish's. And Parish, take us through this prediction here related to supporter activations in events and the like.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ben. And actually, all the conversation so far is going to play real well into some of my comments and prediction here. First, my name is Parish Schneider with the One Cause business, which recently joined the Bonterra family. One Cause has been historically focused on events and campaigns, so much more of that in-person interaction and then helping make all that better. And interestingly, to your comment, Ben, about what the World Wide Web was meant to do, 17 years ago, One Cause folks had the idea that software could help make events, fundraising events specifically, better. And so, 17 years in the making of developing software for that. So excited that now in the last couple of years, AI now is helping make the software that's helping those events be better. It's helping making the software better as well, which is ultimately going to benefit individuals. So what's interesting to me, I think, by contrast, maybe to some of the more technical side of things or more software-oriented mentality, events are deeply human interactions. Right? That's the whole point. We take all this time and energy to show up in person. So one, why software is going to help with that. But two, especially with AI, like, isn't that all about removing a human from an experience? And so we say, no, actually, it's quite the opposite. It's going to make those human interactions that much more impactful. And this isn't just about, mingling, for sure. These events have a purpose, and purpose is fundraising and cultivation. And so it's helping with fundraising and cultivation very specifically. We've seen some nice progression in terms of AI and software maturity, in terms of helping with event preparation, right? It eases time of use. You're able to put more components and more effort into those human interactions, into making that event a really purposeful, mission-driven experience. The software then can help with all of the administrative tasks, with all the other things, so that you can actually stay focused on that event, on the supporters, and on the mission. And AI is adding to that even more so. And so we've definitely seen the preparation time, the time spent is eased with things that we've talked about already, right? So more of the generative AI capabilities, more of the, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? As we move into this more agentic view of things, now we're talking about, can you take this action for me, right? That's terrific. Can you go, note this follow-up or craft this email, do the things that I need to do as part of an overall event experience, pre, during, and post. Can you do some of those actions? But I'm still directing. Where I actually think that the interesting and most interesting development from a projection standpoint is that now you're actually gonna have more of a co-worker. someone that is giving you tips. So you're walking around the room or you're preparing for the event. Who are those guests? Who's that person at table 2 that's raising their paddle so many times? Like, where is their opportunity in the room, both for the current fundraising efforts as well as cultivation and follow up? So now we have more of a co-worker along with other great co-workers, but we know staff is always limited. This co-worker is going to feed ideas for you. You can ask questions, of course, prompt them, but sometimes you don't know what to ask. It's like, actually, you might want to pay attention to this. Check in with this person. Have you noticed what's going on over in that other part of the room? So that's the evolution. That's the prediction, essentially, for where we're all going with this. Ultimately, the goal is to help you fundraise more, right? And whether that's saving time so you can focus on those human interactions, whether that's providing more insights so that you know where to put your emphasis and time, or just making it easier to do all of that, particularly as you think about kind of follow up and follow through. So we keep engaged, we have a great connection, and we build off of that cultivation moment, that human interaction, so that we retain those supporters, and then they want to bring more folks in because they see the mission. It was clear. It was a great event. No, issues and that sort of thing. And boy, they just magically, this team really knew how to make me feel welcome, and they knew exactly what I was looking for. It's that magic that we're trying to unlock with that combination of human, software, and now AI put together.
Parrish, that's great. I had a follow-up question for you there because something you said sparked a thought in my brain about AI. And when you initially had this prediction, I was thinking more about, okay, yeah, there's a lot of things that need to go into creating an event, and AI can certainly help along those lines. But the idea that you just threw out and sparked in my brain was, well, what if the major gift officer also used AI, not to set the event up, but to go in there and say, these are the donors that are in my portfolio that are going to be at the event tonight. Here's where they're sitting. One of the things about AI that you can do is you can have these several conversations. And so your brain doesn't have to remember everything about everyone. You can kind of go back to that conversation where you mapped out where everyone was sitting, like you had sort of mentioned there, and said, oh, where is, Diane Smith? I wanted to go make sure I talked to her, or something to that effect. And now it's right there at your fingertips. I wonder, between those two separate ways in which one is really just event sort of management and the other being sort of just helping us manage the event in a different way, if you will. Do you see one outweighing the other, or equally, or?
Wow, that's a great question. I think that on the one side, it's save time so that I can do more impactful things. On the other, it's like, wow, give me the area that I'm going to spend my time most effectively. And so, yeah, for sure. Historically, I think events and major gifts may be coordinated, not always. It's based on some of our interactions, but certainly software has helped pull that together, so we can see the people that major gifts folks have been working with, and they know they're coming, and maybe they're seeding a special gift for the evening and that sort of thing. That's great. But what do I not see?
Yes.
Right. And that's where enrichment of the data and making that real time for you. Who's that guest that just showed up? They just registered. I didn't know they were coming. That all of a sudden, this is somebody I really do want to meet, as opposed to realizing that, after the fact, before the event's long gone, and now I've got to reach out to that person separately. I can use this opportune moment. Again, it's just magic. You just happen to know to come up to me when I was feeling most connected to the organization, but you didn't know who I was. That's so special and interesting. And now you have an expansion of that major gift effort. So really benefiting, I think, everybody in that effort. Yeah.
I love that. You could even have it as a note taken as you're going along and make sure you're keeping track of everything that's happening. But anyway, that's awesome, Parrish. I'm going to now switch over to our next prediction, which, Kimberly, is yours.
Okay.
And yeah, please take us through how you feel it needs to feel human. That's kind of an interesting conversation to be had. So let's jump into it.
We need AI to feel human. I will also just say, as a fundraiser and a big event person, oh my gosh, to be able to envision what's coming with it. We used to put little stickers or codes on major donor name tags at events so that we knew who they were and our board members knew who they were, right? Like getting those talking points to people so that it's not just the fundraiser who's looking for those major or the executive director, but actually empowering a team of people who are then working together and sharing information more real time is just so powerful. Yes, Parrish, it is magic, but it is coming. It is coming and it is great. And here's the thing that I've heard over and over again as we talk about AI and we talk to our customers about AI. I oversee a team of fundraising coaches that are working one-on-one with hundreds of nonprofits across the country. So we're hearing this real time. AI is great, but it's gotta feel human. We've already talked about the human in the loop yesterday. One of our amazing partners at Amazon Web Services talked about it, called it human at the helm. I was like, I love that. And I'm stealing that from you because AI really is your new hire. I think maybe Mersha said it before. You've got to train it. You've got to work with it to really upskill. And then when it's good, it's good. But guess what? We don't stop there. And that's the great thing about AI is that it is, one, if you're still dabbing your toe into it, there's still plenty of time for you to, and your teams and your organization to upskill very quickly. But also, I want to encourage everybody to remember a very powerful piece of AI, which is it only is where it is today, but tomorrow it's going to be even better. And then the next day and the next day, right? Like there is so much that is building off of this. And so as you are bringing AI into your workflows, remember that you can't go, all right, well, we've got this. We're using AI for that. And so let's just check that box because that isn't how it's going to work as we evolve. So as we think about personalization, what we know from our nonprofit colleagues and donors is that it needs to feel personal. Donors can tell if you're using ChatGPT and you got all those emojis and weird bolding going on, and that EM dash, by the way, I love the EM dash and now I can't use it. It is like totally paralyzed me now. I was like big EM dasher, but now it's supposedly I'm just using AI. So anyways, one, we want the tone of your communications to feel very human, and you can train your tool, your agent to do that, right? And then the other thing is that there is a lot of power in leveraging AI for your donor segmentation so that you can create more personal messages. And then as you are using AI to create those messages, you can go in and you can actually tell better stories. And you can tell better stories. I like to advise folks, like a story is not one and done in one communication. It can actually be built upon across many communications and platforms, right? Think about it like your favorite Netflix show. There's lots of characters. Use AI to really boost up the characters in your stories and the communications that you're putting forward. So those are some of the key things that I would say about this. And then, as we think about this isn't just in fundraising, grant appeals, the storytelling that you're doing across social media. It's also in your grant applications. You'll be able to write grant applications faster, but then you can also insert those human stories and that wonderful human component to it, your quarterly and annual impact statements that you're putting out. I've seen some really cool ones that have been created. So that's super helpful because boy, could those take a long time as someone who's written several of them. And then practicing for your meetings with donors, you can use AI to go in and practice what you're going to say and then have them feed you back whether or not that resonated. You're going to prompt, hey, I'm going to be meeting with a major donor who gave us $10,000 this year. I'm not sure whether or not they're going to give this year. Here are some of the things, blah, blah, blah. Like that practice will be so impactful. So that's my prediction, right? AI is fantastic. It is magic, but it needs to be human. And that is what you and your colleagues and your organization's mission are bringing to those communications.
I love that. And for me, I often use AI to help me craft a message or to help me interpret another message. Why? Because it actually is true that AIs or machines can be better at sort of hearing the little nuanced because we as humans are biased in our own minds, right? And we have a framing that we look at things. So for me, I sometimes believe everyone understands what's going on up here. And so I'll say something without the other context that needs to be said. And LLMs will remind me, wait a minute, you didn't say this or that didn't happen. You should make it here. And often crafts a much more human feeling message, right? Because It's taking into account all the context that I've given it. But I also have trained, like you had mentioned, a bot that speaks like me. But Mircea, yeah, I saw you come off mute. What do you want to add there?
This is a place where experimenting is very important to understand what works and what doesn't. And what we noticed that didn't work was when we gave AI creative freedom. The things that it generated were, like everyone knows about the word hallucinations. They were things that were factually untrue. So we basically had to calibrate AI to establish guardrail and say you cannot just make things up. You need to be factual. You need to rely on the data. And that's when we started having really, really high quality content. AI picking up on details and things that were real and presenting them, right? So let's say instead of having content that was factually untrue, we had valid content that was going really deep, that was speaking on details that were relevant to people receiving that communication. That made all the difference. So this is something that where we realized, like a guardrail was missing. We put it in place, and things improved.
Great point. And I'm just realizing, and I don't know if anyone's seen the South Park episode where AI is like, that's such a smart idea, and reinforcing everything, and a lot of AI does that. I just realized that I was doing that throughout this entire conversation. Like, oh, that's a great point. That's a good idea. Good. So there you go. That is not necessarily not human, right? But programmed in. Anyway, so let's move on to the next three questions. I'm going to turn to the panelists and try to leave time after that to take the Q&A, because I think that there's quite a few questions coming in. So first one, Mircea, so we'll stay with you here about how nonprofits might gain immediate capacity.
Right. So it's important to have context, as you said. So one thing you could experiment with is learning how to collect context, or learning how our Bonterra solution is doing that. Like the types of context it's collecting, and then experimenting with creating content, basically, right? And then trying to chain a number of activities. For example, as Jess was describing in the recorded video, ask the agent to do a number of things in a sequence, and asking for like a human in the loop validation on each stage. I think the value here is like pretty much everyone can use AI to generate content. I think that the productivity boost will occur when people will start chaining activities with good context, so that AI does more than just suggest content, right? It actually does the work. And for that, you need a system that can connect to your existing infrastructure. And this is what we in Bonterra right now are building.
That's a great point. And I'll point out two other just quick things. One is that LLMs are really good. You'll keep hearing me say LLM versus AI, because I don't want to get into the argument, but AI is not just LLMs, but we sometimes use AI as LLMs. But nonetheless, the large language models, the ChatGPTs of the world, the Cursor Claudes out there, I'm sorry, not Cursor, Anthropic Claudes, can do great job at summarizing, and also are great if you have a plan that you want to just pressure test. Those are two easy ways to get capacity. You might get, it's like having a teammate just summarize these long texts or whatever, and it could really save you time there and give you capacity to be able to comprehend more. I'm going to turn now. How should nonprofits prepare for responsible AI expectations from funders? I now forget who I was going to turn to there. I think Kimberly was the next one. Tanuja, it was going to be you. Yes, please. Can you help jump in here?
Yeah, this is a relevant question, because I was looking at the Q&A, and lots of our attendees have asked this question, and I'm so happy that people are asking these questions. So let me start with that. Thank you for really being at keeping that at the forefront as you're thinking about AI. So one thing I will say is there are lots of tools, lots of technologies available on AI right now. The questions you are asking here in this space are the right questions that you should ask all the vendors and all the companies who are building and offering these tools. So the key questions, preparing for responsible AI, if you are buying software and solutions from other vendors, I would say hold them accountable and ask them questions. I will share a little bit about how we look at responsible AI from Bonterra's perspective. And many folks who are here in the meeting today have had a big role to play in building that foundational responsible AI model or the approach. So first one I would say is make sure that there is governance and ethics at the forefront as these companies are building AI tools and solutions. Before it's launched, make sure that the companies are thinking about the global standard that should be met, and there are many that companies are looking at right now and trying to comply with. Make sure that the software is built for fairness, built with ethics in mind. There is accountability. We've all talked about human in the loop. Make sure that the software is built in a way that gives you the power and the control over what these tools are doing. Make sure that the companies are approaching with governance first and ethics first model. And Mercer talked about a couple of guardrails that we have put in our software to make sure it's not hallucinating, that information it's giving you is correct, it's factual. We have many guardrails built in our software, and every company who's thinking of AI in a responsible way should think of that first, period. The second aspect, which is extremely important, is the privacy and security of your data. Eventually, you're responsible for your data. The software that you use are the custodians of that data. So you should be going and asking those questions about how is your data kept secure and how is it private just for you. At Bonterra, we also, as we were designing our solutions, as we continue to design these solutions, that's just non-negotiable for us. Your data is not our currency. Your data is our responsibility, right? So when we look at designing our solutions, we look at enterprise grade capabilities like we encrypt our data. We only work with trusted partners like Amazon Web Services, who also take security extremely seriously and privacy seriously. So we don't use customer data to train our models. So your data is your data. Your data will only be applicable to what the solution is doing for you and not broadly. So we take that very seriously. Any vendor that you work with, any software you work with, you should make sure that your data is treated with utmost sensitivity and privacy. The last one I would talk about is a lot of folks here in Q&A have asked about environmental sustainability. That's a question that a lot of folks are asking for. It's exciting technology, but we also know that it's environmentally expensive. So what we are looking at Bonterra is how do we do this in a way that's also sustainable? And that comes in many, many ways. First is we used the most optimized models for anything we do. And that's really critical because you don't want to over-invest or over-subscribe models, for example. We also make sure that the systems, the infrastructure we use are green infrastructure. For example, I talked about working with AWS. They are very, very particular about maintaining the carbon emissions and the standards of optimization and energy efficiency. So we build upon the infrastructure that's optimized for environmental sustainability, and we build our software in a way that's also responsible in the environmental sustainability fashion. So do ask these 3 questions for sure. And we also have published these on our website. If you're curious about how we are thinking about these responsible AI principles, please go and read, and we are always happy to dig deeper and answer questions.
Yeah, and I'll just also mention that Fundraising AI, which has developed a ethical framework, which I was involved with, and then also has a lot of resources, acceptable use policies. Please go to that website. It's a free resource for anyone out there. There's a ton of resources there at Fundraising AI. I'm turning this last one over to Kimberly, but I want to be cognizant that we only have 4 minutes left. So I'm going to ask if there's just 1 or 2 things that you might have for experiments that we can unlock, and then we can see if we can answer some more Q&A.
Yep. So super quick, just one thing on the last question. Also, as an organization, you can post on your website your approach to your AI statement, right? And what you adhere to in your ethics. So that can be very powerful for donors and funders. On the last question, I always encourage people to create an innovation budget. and have that be board endorsed so that you can go out and actually test and learn new tools, new things, even beyond AI, right? And that gives you the freedom and space and place to do so. Funders love it because they see that you are testing and learning and you are pushing forward with new concepts, and it can be really empowering for your staff to do that as well. Other things, lunch and learns with use cases on how your team is using AI. Partner up with some other organizations in your area to share stories and examples. Create a repository of agents that you have in your organization so that everyone can see them and get idea generation off of them. And then also identify staff who are using AI effectively now and begin to leverage them across your organization as a consultant for other teams. And then also test out concepts and track time and then celebrate the time saved or the learnings during your staff and team meetings. Make this something that just fits into your day-to-day work because it is not going anywhere and there is so much to learn and accomplish from it.
Wonderful, Kimberly. And so I'm going to try to actually, I think there's one more page here to people can download this full list of predictions. Oh, first there's a poll. Yeah. Do you want to get to the poll?
No, that's okay. We can skip the poll just for time's sake. I know we have a lot of questions and I want us to get through a couple as we can. So just want to highlight that you all can scan that QR code there to download the full 2026 report of our predictions. And then I'm also going to drop it here in the chat for folks to click that link and download the full report. And we have a lot of other great resources on our website, so feel free to check those out. But I will leave the last 2 minutes here for some Q&A. So Ben, I'm not sure if you want to go through and see if there's any questions that you want to pose to the panelists.
There's some interesting questions in there. I'll go from there. I know that Tanuja tackled some of the environmental and other issues. There were some questions about Salsa. I don't think that is currently on the roadmap to get Q into Salsa anytime this quarter or the next, but I'm looking at Mircea or Tanuja and they have heard differently, but I believe that is not the case.
I'm not aware of a plan to get Q in that product. No.
All right. And if
great, would be great to get that feedback. If you have our contact, would love to see what problems you're trying to solve and what you're hoping for as a solution or an outcome, and would be happy to dig deeper into that.
I see Wendy asking about a grant writing tool, and part of what we have in our cyber grant suite is a grant writing tool right there. If others have gone through these questions in more detail, I've been sort of facilitating, not looking at the questions. So please jump out and pull them out, and I will make sure we address them. Yes, there will be a recording. You can get that. It's never helpful for a grant writer. Well, Wendy, I think that you'll find that we do have a lot of grant work that is forthcoming, including sort of tools to write grants, find grants, match grants, and evaluate them, all making sure humans are in the loop. Parish, yes, please. I saw you come off mute.
Just a comment, and some of the questions inspire a few of the things as well as the last things we were commenting about. But one, is certainly a provider that's thoughtful is the place you want to ask. And then second, and believe, that's what we're doing here. And second, ask about opportunities, right? Whether you're writing grants or whether you're running events or whatever the case may be, ask what are we doing? Talk to your account managers, talk to the organization, follow the content that we're putting out there because this is an area of focus, but it's also an area of evolution, which gets to some of what Kimberly was talking about. It's not too late. It's continuing. Everything's continuing to evolve, but it's also not too early, right? You're going to want to get in and experiment and learn and grow from there. And I think that was a perfect time. If you haven't been started, if you've been working on some things, add to that. Like this is evolving. We're all doing it together, and contributing and participating in that, I think, is critical. And then the last thing I'll say about the environmental impact, I can't think of a better use of additional computing power than supporting nonprofits in their missions. So I'm not creating deepfake videos, or we're not spamming the world with excess content. We are really trying to advance the nonprofit industry with AI. I think that is responsible in and of itself. And of course, we're going to continue to manage that as best we can as a collective industry.
Well said. Thank you, Parish. Ashley, anything left before we need to close out? I know we're a minute behind.
Yeah, just a minute over time, so I want to be cognizant of folks' time. Just want to thank you all for joining us for this last hour. Thank you all for your commentary in the Q&A and the insightful questions. If we didn't get to reach to your question, we can connect offline and answer and address some of those questions and concerns you might have had. But to the panelists, thank you. Thank you for spending an hour with us. Thank you for your predictions. And I know I'm looking forward to watching the year unfold and seeing whose prediction comes true. I'll be cognizant of that. But in the meantime, folks, thank you again for joining us. And we really hope to see you at our next session. And thank you for staying with us just a little over. But we appreciate your time. Have a good rest of your afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you.